Hi everyone, and welcome to another custom creations video. I want to share with you something that I made recently that's really special, and these are hemp cookies. Now they're vegan and they were inspired by the store version that I am slightly addicted to. Every time I go in there I always pick them up, and I thought I'm gonna make my own variation and then just making it a little vegan friendly, because usually that's caters to everybody. So stay tuned. I'm going to show you how to put all this together, and you're going to find them divine. Okay, here we are. We're going to be using a food processor for this, although you don't actually need one. You can do this by hand. If you do, you'll just have to pre-chop one of the ingredients first. So first up is going to be chia seeds. Nice omega-3 fatty acids in here. These guys have already been soaked for probably about an hour. I left them soaking. Here we have 30 grams of chia seeds soaked in 100 grams of water. I weighed everything out. You can eyeball it, doesn't really matter. Plus, if you find that anything in this mixture gets too thick to work with at any point, you can always add in a little bit more water as well. So, first thing goes in is our chia seeds. I like putting the wet ingredients first at the bottom. It will give a little bit more traction to draw in all the other stuff, the dry matter. I want to mention also that with the chia seeds, I put in there half a teaspoon of sea and Himalayan salt. Salt is always a wonderful ingredient to mash all the flavors together, and that I had soaking in with the chia seeds together. So next thing I'm going to put in here is going to be the dates. Now these dates, I've already taken the pits out, and this is 120 grams of dates. If you weren't using a food processor, then for this part you would have to pre-chop them up as finely as possible on a cutting board with a chef's knife, so that you don't get too much of big chunkiness in the cookies. So there's our dates. Next up, I like to put in all the finer ingredients first. Again, make sure everything blends in well together. And this is the skin zest of 1 organic lemon. Next I'm going to put in the oats, and the oats, we're doing 60 grams of rolled oats. Next ingredient is going to be 20 grams of sesame seeds. These are brown sesame seeds. You can also find black sesame seeds on the stores. Now next up is going to be, I got 3 ingredients here. This is cinnamon, of which we're using 15 grams. This is coconut palm sugar, of which we're using 50 grams. And this yellowish stuff here is actually rice bran germ. This is a product that comes from the Organic Traditions. You may see it in some health food stores. This is not something that you may necessarily find. You don't even have to use it necessarily. I put it in because I have a lot of this ingredient in stock, and I find that it really does add a bit of natural sweetness actually to things, and it's also got quite a lot of B vitamins in here as well. And so it almost takes the place of sugar and adds, I think, fluffiness to the cookie as well. But if you can't get your hands on rice bran germ, then you can probably just use a little bit more sugar or sweetener of your choice. And so I just have these 3 in here. And by the way, of the rice bran germ, I am using 30 grams. And I'm going to put those ingredients next. Just gently, because I don't want all the stuff to fly out in powder form. One of the pesky things about using food processors is that when you initially pulse it, it tends to just throw everything on top of the roof. Alright, now the main ingredient for this, of course, since we're making hemp cookies, are going to be hemp hearts, and we're using 300 grams. So you can see the majority of these cookies is actually the hemp itself. And when I initially said I was making hemp cookies, some of you probably got the idea that it was going to be cannabis cookies, but no, there is no active cannabis in these, although that would make an interesting variation. And there we go. So we got all our ingredients in here. This is a little trick that I like to use. Again, just because I'm a little bit of a neat person and I like avoiding mess as much as possible. if I just give this a little bit of a pre-roll, I always find that I get less of an initial mess with the agitation when I hit the pulse button right away. There we go. Now I'll cover this up and gently pulse. And then I'll just leave it on. Now you'll probably find that you will need to open this up a couple of times just to give the batter a little bit of mix in here so that you get an even blend. And as you can see, we're going to get a pretty thick kind of cookie dough consistency, and that's what we're looking for. But again, if you find that it is too dry to work with, feel free to add a little bit of water. No harm there. Just maybe like tablespoons at a time, 1 tablespoon, maybe 2. And just keep this thing going for as long as you need to until you get everything evenly blended in together. And one of the fun things about custom creations is that sometimes you forget things. Like this here, this is our coconut oil. It's at 60 grams that I had melted slightly in the oven. And as you can see, I'll still be able to blend this in without it, but it definitely goes a long way to helping with the blending process and enhances flavor of the cookies, definitely. And make sure you don't forget it, especially if you're not using a blender for this, because it does give you a very thick mixture and it's going to be quite a challenge on your hands. So I definitely recommend using a food processor because I really like the consistency that it creates. So we're going to tear this up again with the coconut oil, and we're going to have a much nicer, foamier almost kind of texture. Alright guys, so the batter is ready to go. As you can see, it really has a nice thick consistency, but it's quite malleable, especially with that coconut oil. It really helps to give it that consistency. Now, the way I'm going to bake this is on a stoneware piece here. This is something that you can acquire at any kitchen stores. They're really handy because it's like cooking on natural stone. And don't worry about the discoloration. This is normal. It doesn't decrease the efficacy of the stone. Now then, you could also just use a standard silicone tray or some conventional tray lined with parchment paper and then grease with a little bit of coconut oil. So you got a lot of options, but I definitely recommend an investment in a stoneware tray. It gives you really beautiful results with your cooking. Now, this is kind of also optional, but I do like to line just with a little bit of coconut oil, and this is what I would suggest regardless of whatever medium you're using for cooking. And I just really give this a thin layer. Now, one thing to note is that this thing is very porous and it cannot absorb water. If it does, it will shatter in the oven. So be careful when handling it. When you're cleaning it, you're just scraping off whatever residue might be on here, and that's pretty much it for maintenance of one of these guys. Alright, that's all greased up, and I'm going to be using one of these scooper things to pour the batter onto the stone. And this because it's got the little scooper, should make it really easy to scoop out without making a mess, without getting your hands all dirty. There you go, not too shabby. And then you can just pat it down a little bit if you want. You don't have to be too meticulous. It will even itself out to a degree when you bake it. But there you go, that's kind of what you want to do. And just fill your whole tray with this. And here we have it, guys. We got 16 round cookies plus 2 long stripped ones in the end here because I didn't have enough room for round ones. And so now I'm going to give you the cooking times for what is with this setup. So it may vary a little bit depending on what you're using. So this is going to be at a low temperature, about 250 degrees Fahrenheit, for 40 to 45 minutes. So I find that without blasting too much heat, for just a bit of a stretched out period of time, that gives you a very moist cookie. It almost tastes like a ginger molasses cookie, but it's different. And so yeah, we're going to put these in the oven in the middle rack, and we'll see them when they're done. We're looking a little bit through a kind of a dirty window to the oven here, but you can see that these guys really puff up. And we're just going to keep letting them go until they come out with a reasonable amount of firmness and dryness. They will never be fully dry because they will maintain this moist-like texture, but they won't be wet or soggy. Don't worry about that. Check these out, guys. This is the finished product. They smell amazing this entire time. It was a whole tease waiting for them to be finished. So to get them off the stone, you're just going to use a very thin metal spatula, and you just put it underneath, and then it'll come off really easily. I'm going to have to actually try one of these just to show you the texture on the inside, so you can see how smooth and soft the whole thing is. See, it's perfect, like almost like cookie dough texture. There you have it, guys. These are basically flourless, vegan, minimally sweetened because they're naturally sweet hemp cookies. Enjoy. Divine. You guys will enjoy these. Cheers.